The Feast of Moons was the most important night in the Saraxi Dominion. Bright lights filled the sky above the floating palace. Alien nobles from across the stars arrived in shining ships. Dressed in robes that moved like living waves, music from crystal instruments filled the air, and the smell of rare spices drifted through the halls. Inside the grand hall, thousands of Saraxi nobles gathered to celebrate. They laughed, argued, and played games of skill and mind. Their heads were tall and narrow, their skin silver blue, and their eyes glowed softly with knowledge. They were proud, sharp, and careful about rank. For them, respect came from status and winning. At the center of it all sat Lord Varn, one of the most powerful nobles in the Dominion. He was tall even among his kind, with deep violet eyes and long golden bands around his arms. Every word he spoke was sharp, every look he gave was a command. Beside him sat Lady Ilsha, his wife, dressed in a soft green cloak, her face calm and distant. She was known for her beauty and quiet wisdom, but few had ever heard her speak in public. Lord Varn was speaking with other nobles when a soft chime echoed through the hall. The crowd turned. A new guest was arriving late, the guards. At the door stepped aside, and a single human walked in. He was not tall. He wore no gold, no rich cloth, just a dark suit with clean lines. His eyes were steady. His name was Dale, a man from Earth, and many in the room looked at him with confusion or amusement. A few whispered, others laughed. One noble leaned to another and said, "Is this the human curiosity the council invited?" Dale walked with quiet steps. Stopping near the edge of the crowd, he looked around the room, calm, watching, not trying to speak. He didn't bow or wave. He simply waited. Lord Varn raised an eyebrow. "So?" he said loud enough for others to hear. "The council sent us a human. Tell me, Dale of Earth, do you understand where you are?" Dale looked up, met Varn's eyes, and gave a small nod. A hall of the proud, a place where minds test each other, not fists. Some nobles frowned, others smirked. One said, "He speaks with no fear." Another replied, "That will not last." Varn smiled without warmth. "You understand our ways, then? Good. But are you here to learn or to challenge?" Dale looked around once more before replying. "I was invited. If that invitation is not honored, I will leave." That made some nobles quiet. It was true. The High Council had sent the invitation, though no one knew why. Most believed it was for show test to see how a human would behave under pressure. Varn leaned back. "Stay, human. Watch, learn, perhaps even try one of our games." The evening went on. Noble minds clashed in the Hall of Mirrors, where players dueled with logic puzzles, illusions, and thought traps. Spectators watched as the nobles tried to outwit each other using only words and riddles. Light shimmered with every move. A mistake was met with silence. A clever answer with soft applause. Dale stood at the edge and watched. He asked nothing, but each time someone lost, he nodded slightly, as if understanding why. Lady Ilsha noticed him more than once. Her eyes moved toward Dale when no one else was watching. She said nothing. Later, during the mid-feast, as golden fruit and fire tea were served, Varn called out again. "Human," he said, his voice smooth. "Do you play any games of the mind? Or do your kind still use luck and guesswork?" Dale stepped forward slowly. "On Earth, we value reason and luck. Sometimes both help." Varn laughed, and many others joined. "Very well," he said, rising from his seat. "Then let us test you. Come, one round of a logic duel. Just for entertainment." Dale nodded once. "If we play, it must be judged fair by the palace mind-keepers." The crowd grew louder with interest. A human was challenging Varn even if just for one round. It would be amusing at least, they thought. Varn agreed. The judges were called. The floor was cleared. Lights dimmed. The chamber of echoes was open for the duel. As Dale and Varn walked toward it, Lady Ilsha stood. She looked at her husband, but said nothing. Then she turned her eyes toward Dale. For a moment, something passed between them. Dale gave a small nod of respect. Inside the chamber, silence ruled. The duel would begin at the next feast. And though no one believed the Human would win. Many were curious. Who was he? Why had the council sent him? And why did Lady Ilsha look at him not with judgment but with something else? By the end of the night, the Saraxi nobles would remember Dale's name, not because of strength, not because of fame, but because of what happened next. The Chamber of Echoes was wide and circular. Its floor was smooth stone that reflected the ceiling like a mirror. Gentle blue lights floated above the chamber, casting a soft glow. On each side of the room, nobles sat in silence. No one spoke. No one laughed now. At the center stood Dale, the human guest. Across from him stood Lord Varn, confident and tall. Between them sat the three mind keepers, judges trained to observe every move, every word, and every sign of false thought. This was no simple game. A logic duel among the Saraxi was a matter of pride. And tonight, pride was on the line. Varn spoke first. Human, the rules are clear. No tools, no outside help, only thought, speech, and reason. I accept. Dale said calmly. The mind keepers raised their hands. The duel began. Varn's first challenge was a classic Saraxi trap, one of layered riddles made to confuse and force the opponent into guessing. He delivered it with elegance, his voice slow and strong. A few nobles smiled. They had heard this one before. It was used to break many minds. But Dale took his time. He repeated the question slowly. Thinking out loud, he spoke in a way that was easy to follow, step by step. He pulled the puzzle apart. In the end, he answered clearly. The judges gave a silent nod. Correct. Varn did not smile. He raised his hand again. The second challenge came, a riddle wrapped in philosophy, one that made the opponent question their own answer. This one was harder. Even some Saraxi nobles watching could not solve it fully. Dale paused longer this time. He looked at the floor, then at the ceiling, then at Varn. His voice stayed quiet as he replied. Your question is clever, he said, but it has two answers, one that pleases the crowd, and one that is true. Then he gave both answers. The crowd murmured. The mind keepers spoke in harmony. Both are acceptable. The answer is whole. Whispers filled the room. Some looked surprised, others leaned forward, now watching with new interest. The human was not just lucky, he was skilled. Now it was Dale's turn to ask a question. The rules allowed it. 1 question each. He looked at Varn and asked a short, simple, real one with only one answer. But many traps. It was not a Saraxi puzzle. It was human-style, direct, yet tricky. Varn smiled at first, but then his brow furrowed. The question seemed too easy. He gave his answer. The mind keepers paused. Answer is not complete, they said. He failed to consider the hidden line. Some nobles gasped. Others laughed quietly. Varn clenched his fist but said nothing. The duel was close. Now it would come down to one last move, the wager. At the end of such duels, the challenger could offer a final wager, a test of will and belief. It was rare, dangerous. But Varn, proud and restless, saw this as his chance to end it with honor. He stepped forward. Let us raise the stakes, human. The chamber fell silent again. Dale didn't speak. He waited. Varn turned, looking at the nobles, then back at Dale. If I lose, he said, I will give something of great value, a pledge from my own home. He placed his hand over his chest and spoke clearly. I offer Lady Ilsha, my wife, as the price. Shock passed through the crowd. Even the mind keepers looked at each other. Ilsha, who had sat still through the duel, turned slowly toward her husband. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes narrowed just a little. Varn looked at Dale, expecting fear or confusion, but Dale only said, And if I lose, you will speak before the high nobles, Varn replied, and admit that humans are lesser minds. Dale gave a small nod. Then we finish this. The mind keepers lit the final challenge. It would be a test of memory, logic, and emotion combined. A story would be told. Each would hear a version of it, but the story would hide a twist. They must explain what truly happened and why. The story was long, about a traitor, a secret gift, and a lost planet. Both listened in silence. When it ended, Dale spoke first. The traitor lied. He said, but not to steal. He lied to protect a friend. The gift was not for profit, it was a promise. Varn gave his answer next. The traitor was foolish, he said. He should have kept the gift and escaped. Friendship means nothing when survival is at risk. The judges paused. A long silence followed. Then one judge spoke. Both answers carry reason, but only one shows full understanding. Another judge added, the truth was not just in logic, it was in purpose. The third judge raised a crystal light. The human wins, gasps echoed across the chamber. But Dale did not cheer. He simply looked at Varn. I did not ask for your wife. You made the wager. Varn's face darkened. He turned toward Ilsha. But she had already stood, calm, tall, and without fear. She walked toward Dale, her steps steady. When she reached him, she looked into his eyes. You did not ask, she said softly, but you earned my attention. Varn watched, silent and angry. He had won the game almost, but lost something greater. The duel had ended. The crowd had seen something they did not expect. And the story was far from over. The chamber of echoes became silent once again. The light dimmed, and the nobles slowly began to rise from their seats. The duel was over. The human had won. But no one clapped, no one shouted. It was not the kind of victory they were used to, Lord. Varn stood still, tall and stiff, trying to keep his pride. His golden bands no longer seemed to shine as brightly. His lips were tight. His sharp eyes stared at the floor, not at anyone. He had lost. The judges had spoken clearly. But more than the loss, it was what he had offered that burned his pride. Lady Ilsha remained beside Dale. She had not spoken loudly. She had not made any dramatic move. But everyone saw the way she looked at him, not with shame, not with fear only. Quiet respect. In that moment, it was clear to all. The wager had changed more than just titles. Some nobles whispered behind their sleeves. Others left quickly. A few bowed their heads politely toward Dale as they passed, not many, but enough to show a shift had begun. Dale turned to Ilsha and gave a small respectful nod. You do not belong to me, he said quietly. That was never my wish, Ilsha answered in the same soft tone. And yet you won me more honestly than the one who had me. Before he could reply, guards came forward to escort the guests out. The chamber would be closed for the night. The Feast of Moons had ended. Later that evening, Dale stood alone on a quiet balcony. The stars above the Seraxi Palace were larger and brighter than Earth's sky. Twin moons floated above the horizon. He held a simple glass of cool water and stared into the dark sky. He did not feel proud. He felt heavy. The game had been fair. The wager had been made. But something about it left a strange weight in his heart. Footsteps sounded behind him. He turned. It was Ilsha. She walked slowly, her green cloak fluttering in the breeze. She stood beside him, her face calm as always. I thought you might leave, she said. I should have, Dale replied, but I felt it would be rude. She gave a small smile. You are not like our nobles. I'm not a noble at all. Ilsha looked out at the stars. You won with words. But that's not what made you different. Dale turned his eyes toward her. Then what did? You did not treat the game like a battle. You didn't come to win anything. Not even me. Dale nodded slowly. I only came because I was invited. By the High Council. No. By someone I met long ago. A Seraxi scholar. He said I should visit your world one day. He believed humans would bring something your kind had forgotten. Ilsha turned. To him, what was that? Empathy, Dale said simply. The ability to care. Even when it cost something. She was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke again. My people believe emotion is a weakness, that logic and strength are above all. But today, they watched a human win with reason and kindness. He looked down at his hands. I didn't mean to cause problems. You didn't, Ilsha said. But you've changed something. Not only in them, in me too. They stood in silence, the breeze blowing gently around them, inside the palace. Varn sat in his private chamber, alone. The gold in the room seemed cold. The walls felt tighter. He poured himself a dark drink and stared at the empty seat across from him, the one Ilsha used to sit in. He had not lost just a duel. He had lost control. He had lost the gaze of the court, and most of all, he had lost the quiet trust of his wife. He thought about the wager. It had seemed clever at the time, bold, the kind of move only a powerful noble could make. He never expected to lose. No Saraxi ever had, not to a human. But now that he had, the result was worse. Then shamed he picked up a small cube from the table and crushed it in his hand. It cracked under his grip, turning to dust. He remembered Ilsha's face after the duel. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just turned away. That hurt more than any word. The next morning, Dale prepared to leave the palace. He packed his few things into a small case and stood near the landing dock. A small transport ship waited for him. The invitation had been for one night only. He had played his part. It was time to go. But just before he stepped onto the ship, he heard a soft voice behind him. "You're leaving without saying goodbye?" He turned. Ilsha stood there, dressed not in noble robes, but in a simple gray tunic. She looked different, softer, lighter. "You don't belong here anymore," Dale said. "Not after what happened." She stepped closer. "And you think I belong with Varn?" He was quiet. Ilsha continued. "He gambled with me. You didn't. He claimed me. You freed me. Who do you think I trust?" Dale looked at her, unsure. "If you follow me, the nobles will speak against you." "Let them," she said. "They spoke against you too. But you stood tall." He looked at the ship, then at her. "You're sure?" She smiled. "I'm already walking." Together, they stepped onto the ship. As the engines lit up and the ship rose from the platform, the nobles in the palace watched from high windows. And deep inside, many knew the real duel was never about words or riddles. It was about choice. And Ilsha had chosen. The ship moved quietly through the soft sky, leaving behind the floating palace of the Saraxi. Inside, Dale sat across from Ilsha, still unsure what to say. He watched her calmly as she looked out the window, her face thoughtful. It had only been one night since the logic duel, one night since everything changed. He had come to the palace as a guest. Now, he was leaving with the wife of a powerful noble. Not because he took her, not because he demanded her, but because she chose to walk beside him. Dale was a man who believed in balance. He didn't like chaos. But now, he was in the middle of something much bigger than himself. Ilsha broke the silence. "The stars look different when you are free." Dale gave a small smile. "They always look the same to me." "Maybe that's the difference," she replied. "Humans look at stars and feel hope. Many of my kind only see distance." Dale leaned forward. "Why did you really come with me?" She turned and looked into his eyes. "Because you didn't ask me to. Because when you won, you didn't celebrate. You respected me more than the one who claimed to love me ever did." Dale nodded slowly. "Still, this wasn't supposed to happen." Ilsha tilted her head. "What was supposed to happen?" "I was supposed to lose," Dale said, "or at least leave quietly. Now your name will be talked about in every Saraxi hall." Ilsha's voice was soft but strong. "Let them speak. They've spoken about others before. But now, they will have to speak about truth." Back at the palace, the mood had changed. Nobles gathered in quiet groups, whispering. The duel had not been forgotten. It had shaken the walls of tradition. Lord Varn had not left his chambers since the defeat. He had sent no message. He had accepted no visitors. His pride was wounded. But more than that, something else had taken root: jealousy. He had lost his wife. Not to a thief. Not to a warrior. But to a man who used words with kindness. To a human. He couldn't accept it. 2 days later, Dale and Ilsha arrived at a quiet outpost on the moon of Zareth, a place known for its gardens and peace. The stars here were soft, the air rich with calming scents. There were no nobles, no eyes, no rules. They rented a small house near the edge of the cliffs. The house was simple stone walls, wooden floor, a small glass roof to see the sky. Ilsha seemed at peace. She watered flowers, walked among the trees, and spoke more now than ever before. She told Dale about her childhood, how Seraxi girls were taught silence and respect, how emotions were buried and logic praised. Dale listened. He never judged. He only asked questions when needed. In return, he shared stories of Earth. He told her about sunrises, about rain on rooftops, about children who chased dreams in broken cities. Ilsha listened like the stars were inside his words. One evening, while sitting under the open roof, Ilsha said something that stayed with Dale. "You were not raised with our rules," she said, "but somehow you understand us better than we do." Dale looked at the stars above. "Sometimes standing outside gives you a better view of what's inside." She smiled. "That's what scares them." Dale turned to her. "Who?" "The nobles," Ilsha answered. "They fear what they don't control. You are not from their world, yet you beat them in their own game. And worse, you showed their weakness." Dale stayed silent. Ilsha continued. "They don't care that I walked away. They care that I made a choice. They don't want others to think they can do the same." That night, a message arrived. It was from the Seraxi Council, marked with the seal of the High Chamber. Dale opened it carefully. It read, "The logic duel held on the night of the Feast of Moons has caused disturbance among noble houses. While the game was fair, the wager has led to public unrest. Lord Varn has appealed for a hearing before the full council, claiming dishonor. You are called to attend." Dale read it twice. Then he handed it to Ilsha. Her face did not change. "They're preparing to twist the truth." Dale asked, "Will you come with me?" She nodded. "Of course. My voice is mine now." 3 days later, they entered the Hall of Clarity, a tall, white tower in the center of the capital city. The hall was wide and silent. At the far end sat the 12 counselors, dressed in black and silver. Lord Varn stood to one side, his face calm but his eyes burning. Dale and Ilsha walked in together, side by side. A counselor spoke. "We are not here to judge the duel. The rules were followed. We are here to understand what followed it and what it means for our people." Varn stepped forward. The human used emotion to cloud the minds of those present. His style of speech created confusion. "His presence has led to disruption." Ilsha raised her voice clear and steady. "No," she said. "The only confusion is among those who forgot what honor means." Another counselor asked, "Lady Ilsha, do you deny that your husband had the right to speak for you in the wager?" She replied without fear, "I do. He had the right to wager his own pride, not my life." A quiet murmur moved through the hall. Ilsha looked at each counselor. "The human never claimed me. He won with truth. I followed him with my own feet." Varn said coldly, "You have disgraced our ways." Ilsha turned to him. "Then your ways are in need of change." The hall fell silent. Dale stepped forward. At last, he spoke with calm strength. "I did not come here to take anything. I only came because I was asked. I won fairly. But if the cost is too high, I'll return to Earth and stay away." Ilsha looked at him, surprised. But before anyone could reply, one elder counselor raised his hand. "No," the old voice said. "Let the truth be known. A choice was made. Not stolen, not forced." He looked at the others. "Let it stand." And so it did. After the council meeting ended, silence followed Dale and Ilsha as they walked out of the tall white hall of clarity. Outside, the city of the Seraxi buzzed in low tones. Nobles looked from windows. Scholars whispered behind closed doors. Word had already spread. The human had not only defended himself, Lady Ilsha had defended him too. But Dale did not feel proud. He felt uncertain. He had never wanted to stand in the middle of their politics. He had only come to answer an invitation. Now he was a name in their history. Ilsha, however, walked with a new kind of strength. Her steps were sure, her eyes calm. It was as if something heavy had finally left her shoulders. They returned to the quiet moon of Zareth, where the gardens waited for them. But something had changed. They both felt it. The moment with the council had not ended the story, it had pushed it forward. On the 5th night back at their quiet home, Dale sat near the cliffside, watching the glowing sky. Ilsha joined him, carrying 2 cups of warm root tea. She handed one to him and sat close. "You look like you were far away," she said gently. I was thinking, Dale replied, about Earth, about how I came here thinking I'd be a guest for one night. Now look at all this. Ilsha sipped her tea. You changed more than just one night. I didn't mean to. She smiled. Sometimes change comes from the one who doesn't mean to. He looked at her. Do you regret it? She didn't answer right away. The wind moved through her hair as she stared at the stars. Then she spoke. I was born into a noble house. I was trained to listen, to obey, to speak only when invited. I followed all those rules. I was quiet, I was proper, and I was empty. Her voice stayed calm. But Dale felt the weight in her words. You didn't come with power or wealth, she continued. You came with respect. That's what changed. Meep Dale set his cup down. If you ever want to return to your people, she reached for his hand. I already chose. My people were never the nobles. My people are those who see me, not as a prize, not as a symbol, but as a person. They sat there without speaking for a while. The sky above them began to shift with soft green lights. Zareth's night glowed with peaceful beauty, but peace never lasts forever. Back in the city, Lord Varn did not rest. His name still held weight among many nobles, though he had lost the duel and his wife. He had not lost his pride or his anger. He gathered a group of allies. Some feared change. Some hated the council's decision, and some simply wanted to see the human leave. They met in hidden chambers, whispering plans. Varn's voice was cold. He thinks he has won, but we will remind him Ceraxi tradition is not broken by one clever mind. One noble asked, What do you plan? Varn answered, We will take back what was stolen. 2 days later, a message came to Dale's door. It was sealed with red wax and carried by a silent courier. Dale opened it and read the words carefully. His face darkened. What is it? Ilsha asked. He handed her the letter. You are invited to speak at the Hall of Voices. Refuse, and your actions will be seen as dishonor to our history. Attend alone. Ilsha frowned. It's a trap. Dale nodded. I think so too. Then you won't go? He looked at her. If I don't, they'll say I'm a coward. If I do, they might try to silence me. Ilsha stood up. Then you won't go alone. Dale gave a small smile. They asked for me only, she replied. And I gave up everything to walk beside you. That includes the risk. The next morning, they arrived at the Hall of Voices, an old building made of black stone and echoing pillars. Inside, dozens of nobles were already seated. No counselors, no judges, only voices of tradition. Varn stood at the front. Dale walked in calmly, Ilsha beside him. Varn raised a hand. Only the human was invited. Ilsha did not step back, and I came by choice. Just as I did the night you gambled me, murmurs spread through the hall. Varn's eyes narrowed. Then let us speak plainly. He turned to the nobles. This human has walked freely among us. He has turned one of our own against our ways. He claims wisdom, but he is not Ceraxi. Should our customs bow to an outsider? Dale stepped forward. I never asked your customs to bow. I asked only for fairness. You got your fairness, Varn snapped, and you stole what was not yours. Ilsha raised her voice. He stole nothing. You gambled with something sacred, my will. That was your mistake. Varn's voice grew sharper. Then let the room decide. Let the nobles vote. Is the bond between this human and Ilsha a true one or a false claim from a trickster? Gasps filled the room. A public vote was rare. Dangerous. Dale looked at Ilsha. We don't have to do this. She looked back with steady eyes. Yes, we do. One by one, the nobles stood and spoke. Some sided with Varn. They said tradition must be guarded, that humans had no place in noble matters. Others, however, spoke in favor of Dale. They had seen his duel. They remembered his words. Finally, one old noble, quiet for most of the session, stood up. She looked around and said, We were not shamed by the human. We were shamed by the one who treated his own wife as a prize. Her voice echoed. Let the truth be this, she said. A bond is not made by force or games. It is made by choice, and Lady Ilsha chose. Varn had no words left. The nobles voted dot, and the result was clear. Dale's bond with Ilsha was accepted, not by law, but by will. Outside, as Dale and Ilsha left the hall, she held his hand. "They tried to break us," she said. "But they didn't." Dale replied. She smiled. "Because I chose you, and I'll keep choosing you, and this time, no one could take that away." The vote inside the Hall of Voices changed everything. The nobles had spoken. Not all, but enough. They did not support Lord Varn's demand. They did not see Dale as a thief or an outsider anymore. They saw something different, a human who had walked with truth and a woman who had spoken with courage. When Dale and Ilsha walked out of that ancient building, the sky above the city of Saraxi was clear and wide. But under that sky, one noble stood broken. Lord Varn died. He remained behind after the hall emptied. His hands rested on the cold stone railing, his face hidden in shadow. His pride, once tall like a tower, now stood cracked. For many years, he had ruled his house with silence, strength, and control. He never expected to lose. Not like this. Not by the voice of a human, not by the choice of his wife. A young noble approached him quietly. "My lord, shall we speak to the others?" Varn didn't move. "They've already spoken." Back on the moon of Zareth, Dale and Ilsha returned to their small stone home. The garden had grown taller since they left. Soft wind blew through the trees, and the stars were brighter than before, for the first time in many days. Peace followed them. Ilsha walked barefoot along the garden path. She touched the petals of a silver blossom and smiled. "Your world," she said to Dale, "must be full of gardens like this." He shook his head. "No, Earth is crowded, busy, beautiful too, but not like this, still." She said softly, "You brought beauty with you." Dale sat on the steps and watched her move among the plants. He was not a noble. He was not trained in their customs. But he had done something few could. He stood in truth without force. And now, even some Saraxi nobles had begun to question the old ways. But power does not fall without noise. Lord Varn's silence lasted 3 days. Then a storm came. A public message was sent across the Dominion. It came from the High Council, signed by 6 voices of judgment. After review of events following the Feast of Moons, we find Lord Varn guilty of disrespecting the Code of Bonds. His use of wager in the form of a living partner breaks the law of will. His name is removed from the noble registry. His power is withdrawn. It was rare, so rare that many nobles had to read the words twice. Varn was no longer a noble. His titles were gone. His name, once spoken with respect, would now be followed by silence. Ilsha read the message in her hands. She stood by the window, her face still, her thoughts quiet. Dale walked up beside her. "Are you all right?" She nodded. "I thought I would feel relief, but instead, I feel sadness." He didn't interrupt. She continued. "Varn was not kind to me, but he was once a strong man. I don't know when pride turned him into something else." Dale looked at her. He tried to hold what he never truly valued. Ilsha turned her head. "And you?" "I never tried to hold you," he said. "I just hoped to walk beside you." She placed her hand over his. "You did more than that." News spread quickly through the Dominion. Some nobles remained cold and distant. Others, younger ones, began to talk openly. What is a bond without choice? Why do we still treat partners as property? If a human can respect our ways better than we do, what does that say about us? These were not loud voices yet, but they had begun. In the city below the council tower, Varn now walked among common Saraxi. He wore no gold, no cloak. His eyes, once sharp with power, were now quiet with thought. People looked at him, some with pity, some with fear, some turned away. His house guards had left. His nameplate had been removed. His chambers stood empty. He sat on the edge of a fountain, water running beneath his hands. A child nearby asked her mother, "Who is that?" The mother whispered, "He once gambled with something he didn't own." The child asked, "What did he lose?" The mother replied, "Everything." Varn heard every word. Meanwhile, Dale and Ilsha walked through the market of Zareth together. It was the first time Ilsha wore plain clothes in public. No symbols, no noble rings. Just a soft gray cloak and a gentle smile. Some Saraxi still stared, but some now bowed their heads in quiet respect. One shopkeeper gave Ilsha a small gift, a tiny star-shaped stone. For courage, he said. Ilsha accepted it with both hands. Thank you. The shopkeeper looked at Dale. Many laughed when we heard a human would face our nobles. No one laughs now. Dale smiled kindly. I only came to listen, and that's what made you win. The shopkeeper said. That night, in the quiet of their home, Ilsha placed the star stone on a shelf. She sat beside Dale and looked at him with gentle eyes. Do you ever miss Earth? Sometimes? He said. But not tonight. She leaned against him. I don't miss anything from before. The wind moved through the window. A silver leaf floated inside and landed near their feet. Ilsha picked it up and held it to the light. Do you think change is coming? She asked. I think, Dale said. It already started. Far above them, in the council tower, the elders spoke again. One said, We must prepare for questions. Another replied, We should have prepared long ago. A third whispered, One human, and one choice, has done more than we ever expected. And deep in the records of the Dominion, a new entry was added. Let it be remembered. On the night of the Feast of Moons, truth was tested. A human mind met Saraxi pride. Words, not weapons, changed the path of honor. It had been many weeks since the night of the logic duel. Since that one strange evening when a quiet human entered a room full of alien pride and walked out with respect, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. Dale and Ilsha now lived in peace on the quiet moon of Zareth. The sky remained soft and wide. The garden around their home had grown even brighter. The stars above no longer looked far and cold. They felt close like silent witnesses to a new story being written. Each morning, Dale woke early. He walked the paths with Ilsha, helped gather fruit, and sometimes sat under the trees just to think. His mind was always full, but now it was not heavy. Ilsha had changed too. She smiled more often. She spoke more freely. Her voice, once trained to be soft and careful, now carried truth without fear. She was no longer Lady Ilsha of Housevarn. She was simply Ilsha, and that name was now known far across the Saraxi Dominion, not as a noble, but as a woman who made her own choice. One afternoon, a ship arrived. It was small and quiet, painted with the colors of the Council of Thought. Dale and Ilsha stood near the landing platform as the door opened. A young Saraxi stepped out, holding a sealed letter. I was sent by the High Council, he said. They wish to speak with both of you. Dale raised an eyebrow. About what? The council has decided, the messenger replied, to open a new place of learning. A center where humans and Saraxi can exchange knowledge. They want you to help lead it. Ilsha looked surprised. You want us to teach? The messenger nodded. Not just teach, guide. Watch, help build something new. Dale took the letter, read it slowly, then folded it in his hand. Tell them. We'll think about it, he said. The messenger bowed and returned to his ship. That evening, Dale and Ilsha sat near the edge of the cliff, the wind soft around them. Ilsha held the letter in her hands now. Do you want to go? She asked. Dale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I came to your world thinking I'd be here for one night. Now I'm being asked to shape its future. Ilsha smiled. And are you afraid? Yes, Dale admitted. But not of the work. I'm afraid of doing it without care. Ilsha placed her hand on his. You don't rush, you listen. That's what they noticed. That's what I noticed too. He looked at her. If we do this, it won't be easy. There will be resistance. There always is, Ilsha replied. But the path forward doesn't need to be easy. It just needs to be real. So they accepted. Weeks later, the center of shared minds opened. On a calm plateau above the Saraxi capital. It was not tall or wide. It had no sharp corners or high towers. It was made of simple stone and open air. Inside, there were no ranks, no thrones. Just long tables, circles of chairs, and windows that let the light fall in freely. The first students came slowly. Some were Saraxi nobles who were curious. Some were human scholars who had crossed many stars to be there. Others were quiet thinkers. artists, and even children. Dale and Ilsha welcomed them all the same. Ilsha taught about Seraxi thought methods, how their puzzles worked, how logic shaped their lives. But she also spoke of the danger of too much pride. Dale taught human problem-solving, how Earth dealt with unknowns, how mistakes became part of learning, not shame. He shared stories, not just facts, but feelings, together. They showed that a sharp mind is stronger when it carries kindness. One day, a student asked Dale, "Are you still proud of beating Lord Varn?" Dale looked at the boy kindly and said, "I'm not proud of beating anyone. I'm proud I didn't become what I stood against." The boy didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. Back in the city, not everyone accepted the change. Some nobles still grumbled. Some refused to speak Dale's name, but none dared challenge him again. His voice had become a quiet current beneath their tradition, steady and growing stronger with each passing day. Even those who disliked him could not deny one truth. He had done what many nobles never could: win without cruelty, speak without pride, and lead without force. One evening, Dale and Ilsha stood on the roof of the learning center. The stars above were bright, and a soft glow from the city below lit the edges of the hills. Ilsha said, "Do you remember the night you arrived at the palace?" Dale laughed gently. "I remember being nervous. You didn't look nervous. I was. But I saw something in your eyes that made me feel steady." Ilsha turned to him. "And I saw something in your silence that felt safe." They stood there for a while, just watching the stars. Ilsha then asked, "Do you think people will forget what happened?" Dale shook his head. "They might forget the words, but not the feeling. The feeling of choice, of change, of respect." Ilsha smiled. "Then the story was worth it." "Yes," Dale said. "Because you didn't just walk with me, you changed everything beside me, far across the stars." On a distant planet, a small group of Seraxi thinkers read the reports from the center. One of them, an elder, closed the file and said, "The future may speak with a new voice." Another replied, "And that voice may be human." The third, younger than the rest, added softly, "Or perhaps it will speak with both." And so the tale of the wager faded into history, not as a story of victory or defeat, but as the beginning of something better, a new voice, a new bond, a new path chosen freely together.